Hey, you guys, today we are going to be learning about the purpose of the Michigan Constitution. So, we are going to take a look at this Brain Pop video, and this is going to be talking and focusing about the United States Constitution, but it will help you to understand a little bit about what a constitution is so that you can learn about our state after this.
Mr. Gribbers told me my mother was here with a note. That's not my mother. Dear Tim and Moby, what is the U.S. Constitution? Is it a law? From Jake. A constitution is a basic set of rules for government. It lays out how the government of a particular country works. So the U.S. Constitution does that for the United States. When our nation was founded, most countries were ruled by kings and queens. They had nearly absolute authority to make decisions for everyone and do whatever they wanted. But our founders wanted a system based on the rule of law. Everyone in the country, no matter who they are, has to follow the law. And the U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. That means all other laws have to stay within the limits it sets out. Any law that conflicts with it is illegal and declared unconstitutional. Well, the people who wrote the Constitution, called the Framers, divided it into several sections. First, there's the preamble, or introduction, which sets out the goals of the document. Then come the 7 main sections, called articles. Each article covers one part of government or a key government process, like how a new state can join the country, or the rules for appointing a judge. Finally, we have additions to the original document, called amendments. The framers knew the country would grow and evolve in ways they couldn't predict. So, the Constitution includes rules to amend or change the Constitution itself. But passing an amendment is way more difficult than passing a law. Since the Constitution's creation more than 200 years ago, it's only been amended 27 times. Our Constitution is based on a few core principles. One is self-government, also called popular sovereignty. The preamble starts with the words, "We the people," in huge letters. The idea is that the American people are creating a government through the Constitution. The power to rule belongs to us. But it wouldn't be practical if we had to weigh in on every decision the country needs to make. So we elect leaders to represent us in Washington. They make choices on our behalf by passing laws, appointing judges, running agencies, all that stuff. This kind of government is called a republic. We, the people, lend our power to representatives. If we don't like how they use it, we elect someone else the next time around. If our representatives try to abuse their power, that's against the law. They can only do what the Constitution allows them to. If a power isn't specifically written there, they don't have it. This principle of limited government prevents our leaders from grabbing too much power. It's like the flip side of popular sovereignty. We, the people, start off with all the power, and the government starts off with no power beyond what we give it. State governments are another big limitation. The Constitution strikes a balance between national and state power. This system is called federalism. Delegated powers are those granted to the federal government. Like, it has the power to print money and declare war. While the states get reserved powers, like the power to establish schools and make new marriage laws. Some powers are shared by the nation and the states, like collecting taxes. These are called concurrent powers. Of course, both state and federal governments are limited by the Constitution. Besides having to share power with the states, the federal government itself is divided. The separation of powers splits control of the government into 3 branches. That ensures that no single branch will gain too much power. The legislative branch, which consists of both chambers of Congress, makes the laws. The executive branch, which includes the president, enforces the laws. And the judicial branch, which is the whole federal court system, reviews the laws. This division also creates a system of checks and balances. That means that each branch checks or limits the other branch's power. Like when Congress passes a law, the president can veto or reject it. But with enough votes, Congress can override the veto and pass it anyway. After a law passes, the federal courts can rule that it violates the Constitution. The highest court, called the Supreme Court, makes the final decision about constitutionality. Individual rights are another big check on the government's power. The Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, lists some of those liberties. They include freedom of speech, the right to a jury trial, freedom of the press, and protection against unfair searches. These amendments were added just after the Constitution itself was approved. Many of the later amendments cover individual rights too. The 13th Amendment outlaws slavery. 14 says that state governments have to respect the same individual rights as the federal government. 15 and 19 gave African Americans and then women the right to vote. Remember how the people have the power in our democracy? Voting is how we exercise that power. It took a while for Americans to realize that we the people includes all of the people. So we updated the Constitution to reflect that. Well, that's the thing about the US Constitution. It isn't perfect, but it gives us everything we need to make it, well, more perfect. That's what it means when people say that it's a living document. As our values change, the Constitution adapts while still holding to its core principles, which I guess is its own kind of perfection. Hey, I really have to get to my next class, Moby. I mean, Mom. Eh.
All right. So now we're going to come back and we are going to watch this video.
From Arborwood. Today we're going to talk about the Michigan Constitution. The Michigan Constitution is a written plan that the government from Michigan made up for themselves. The Michigan Constitution does 4 things. It has 4 purposes. First, it lets the government know what it can do and what it cannot do. It describes the individual rights and freedoms that people have, like freedom of speech, freedom of religion. It divides the power between 3 branches of government, and it limits the power of the state government. The Michigan Constitution, first of all, describes what the state government can and can't do. It's a limited government, which means that the government can't just do whatever it wants. It can only do what the people have given it the power to do. The Michigan Constitution describes individual rights that people have, like freedom of speech and freedom of religion. Those are all written out in the Michigan plan called the Constitution. The Michigan Constitution divides power among 3 branches of government. You'll be learning more about these 3 branches of government in the next lesson. But for now, those 3 branches are the legislative branch, which makes the laws, the executive branch, which carries out the laws, and the judicial branch that enforces the laws. Another thing the Michigan Constitution does is it limits the power of the state government. It establishes limits that were already thought of and written in before it was ever signed. The limits protected the people against a government that might only be looking out for its own good. Now you get to show what you know. Before you do this graphic web, I want you to watch the other videos that are also in this lesson. They will help you understand a lot more too. So when you get done watching all of the videos, I want you to create your own graphic web like the one that's here. You can use your Chromebook and Google Drawing, or you can just draw it on a paper or poster with pencils, crayons, markers, whatever you want. Be creative. In your graphic organizer, I want you to write Michigan Constitution in the center.
Okay, you guys. So the 4 purposes of the Michigan Constitution are it lets the government know what it can do and what it can't do, describes the individual rights and freedoms people have. For example, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and it divides the power between those 3 branches of government. and it also limits the power of the state government. So those are the 4 purposes. You are going to be doing this on Seesaw. So the template is attached to this activity. You are going to put in each bubble what is important, what are the 4 purposes, which we just went over, for the Michigan Constitution. Okay? So let me know if you guys have any questions.